You're listening to the Really Useful Podcast. This is the tech podcast for technophobes from makeuseof.com. This week we are looking at the Activision and Microsoft merger / purchase, whatever that is. A robot vacuum cleaner has escaped. James Cameron warns on the dangers of deep fakes. And a grinder scammer has been jailed. We'll also be explaining the differences between USB-A and USB-C, and we might also have a look at how car Wi-Fi works, and we'll also have our usual recommendations. My name is Christian Corley, and with me this week is Gavin Phillips. How are you doing?
Yes, very well, Christian. Yeah, another week begins, and looking forward to see what it brings. How about yourself?
Yeah, generally the same. My youngest just turned 5 yesterday, so I'm kind of, although alcohol wasn't imbibed, I tell a lie, I had a pint of cider. I do feel like I've got some sort of party hangover. It was only a kids' party, but there's a lot of preparation required for a children's party, isn't there? So
There really is, and if you hit cake, eat all the cake that hard as well. When you got to tidy up at the end, and it's just tidy up that corner, and before you know it, it's game over.
Yeah. If you don't know this already, kids' parties in the organisation of children's parties is kind of cyclical. So like year one, you're like, let's have a party. We'll organise it ourselves. Shouldn't be a problem. Year one and a day, you're like, that killed me. Next year, we'll book somewhere. The following year, you book somewhere, and that just turns into a logistical nightmare in terms of how much it costs and getting people there and getting cake there and stuff, and then getting people away. You say to yourself the day after, next year, I'm doing it all myself. And so it continues. So we're at the stage of next year, we're going somewhere. So let's kick this off. Massive news over the past few days has been Microsoft acquiring Blizzard, Activision Blizzard, I should say. And Activision is a huge games company that goes back to the early days of the Atari games console, the Atari 2600. There was Activision, there's David Crane, a few other guys releasing games. Activision obviously grew immensely over the years and has merged with other companies, bought other companies. I'm not even sure if it's the same Activision at this stage. I think it's possibly a name that was picked up by another company's name. Was it Infogrames? I might be wrong. It's not the original Activision. It hasn't existed as an entire lineage over the years, but it has done massively with huge games such as Call of Duty, World of Warcraft, Diablo, Overwatch, something called Candy Crush, which you may have heard of, and StarCraft, which I actually haven't heard of. It's come out of the blue, hasn't it?
It was surprising that when the news dropped towards the end of last week, it kind of took the world, not just the gaming world, but the entire tech world by surprise that Microsoft was dropping just shy of $70 billion to make this insanely massive. It's not really a merger though, is it? It's a takeover, isn't it?
It is a takeover, yeah. I think as well, just to put that in context, that's 70 billion. And I think we mentioned this briefly last week, is that 70 billion. It's, if you consider what Disney paid for Star Wars and Marvel, that was 8 billion.
Yes, it's like nearly 10 times as much.
Yeah.
And the same for Microsoft buying LinkedIn, the workplace social media network, and that's like 10 times as much as that. But in that as well, the point you made actually there about the price of an enormous video game company versus, one of the most recognizable or two of the most recognizable film franchises in the world just shows the scale of the gaming industry at a flashpoint there. So the gaming industry as a whole is way more evolved than films, as films have switched more to the streaming model that we're also used to now. The price of film companies has sort of slowly dropped off, whereas game companies are only increasing in value.
Yeah. Now, this proposition of an acquisition obviously hasn't completed yet and has to go through all the usual official channels and checks. So it may not happen. I suspect Sony aren't particularly happy about it.
I would think they'd be quaking in their boots at the size of what Microsoft are going to take on here. The Xbox Game Pass subscription service already arguably beats Sony's offering sort of hands down. They don't have really a comparable product to Game Pass, although there is one in the works. But adding all of the games that will come with Activision Blizzard to Game Pass will make it a ridiculously big proposition to try and beat.
Yeah. For people concerned about their games continuing to exist after Microsoft have swallowed up Activision Blizzard, Microsoft have said that Call of Duty will remain on PlayStation. So that's some reassurance, I suppose. Depending on how much you trust Microsoft as well, I suppose.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. How much do you trust them to keep doing it? I guess with titles as big as Call of Duty, you would want to keep the cross-platform income from both of them. If you're spending $70 billion, you don't necessarily want to immediately cut off one of your main sources of revenue. That's how I would look at it anyway.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's undermining the price that's been posited, isn't it, if you're going to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. And, it could open up more games going back and forth across the two as well. If Sony feel like the only way that they can maybe compete with Microsoft after the acquisition goes through, maybe we'll see some of those long-standing Sony exclusives maybe coming across to Microsoft. I mean, I highly doubt it, but it was sort of like maybe just to claw some of that market share back.
Yeah, wouldn't surprise me. But I don't think it'll be historical ones. I think they'll just end the whole idea of exclusives. Perhaps.
Yeah, which I would be quite happy with, really. That's one of the main things that Sony and PlayStation has going for it. But the sheer volume of awesome games that Microsoft are going to have access to it's certainly going to tip the scales.
A slightly more frivolous story now. A robot vacuum cleaner made a break for freedom after giving staff the slip at a Travelodge hotel. It failed to stop at the front door of the hotel and just kept going, and it was eventually found under a hedge. Now, robot vacuum cleaners. My youngest, who I mentioned earlier, she's okay with it now. But when we first got a robot vacuum cleaner, it was a couple of years ago, she's absolutely petrified of it. So the idea that it could actually leave the house and go off and do its own thing would absolutely revive those fears. I suspect this is something to do with the VAC being unable to find its base station, but I mean, mine's occasionally, if we rearrange the furniture, it does get a bit confused. It's a great story, though. I love this.
I like the fact that it was found under a bush, sort of like it had forgotten that it was a robot, had taken on a new sense of being, returning to nature. I'm done with running around this hotel. I'm going home.
Apparently, it was announced on someone's social media or somewhere, and someone joked that one feared for its safety in the great outdoors, pointing out that nature abhors a vacuum, which is that's a round of applause for that. In fact, we've got a applause button. Hang on, is it that one? No, it's not that one. That's the children relieved that the robot vacuum has been retrieved. Robot vacuum. I mean, if you don't have a robot vacuum, I am of the opinion that they are the best domestic labor-saving device for any household since the invention of the dishwasher. I think they're wonderful. So if you don't have one, you should certainly consider. In fact, we've probably got a list of the best robot vacuum cleaners currently available on MakeUseOf, so I'll include that in the show notes, along with everything else that we discuss in this week's show. James Cameron has warned on the dangers of deepfakes, and I'm a little bit concerned that it takes like a Hollywood director to highlight the dangers of deepfakes. This is a guy who has worked with CGI in cinema almost since its inception, and he's been a big driving force behind the use of CGI, which is obviously the key part of deepfakes is to use computer graphics to trick people. although there's obviously key dangers about it, I don't really think there's an awful lot that people can do. It's got to be down to the software companies and the ISPs as well to tackle this, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. There's not that much that can be done. Educating people as to what, how deep fakes might be used or where you might encounter them, but the technology it's not good enough that a regular person could make an accurate deep fake that would really, really trick or confuse you that much that you would act upon it. I think if you think back to the first one that really went big and viral, the Jordan Peele acting out as Barack Obama. Do you
Yeah,
remember that one?
yeah.
So that was the first one that really brought it all to light, aside from the far more insidious uses of deepfakes, of course. And you look back at that video now, which I think was maybe 3-4 years ago, and you can see it looks a bit janky, but the technology, it's better, but there is still the jankiness around how the mouths and the eyes move. They don't move in sync. So, yeah, I'm not 100% sure, but I think you are absolutely right in that if it takes a Hollywood director to bring these things to the fore, then there maybe is a larger issue afoot.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we'll obviously see how this transpires. This is a kind of an aspect of modern technology that is kind of very much in its infancy still. The only thing we can really suggest is never take anything at face value, which obviously is very suitable for deepfakes. No pun intended. Slightly intended. Okay, Grinder, a scammer, has been jailed for blackmailing men for after. Well, let's go into this. A man has been jailed for 5 years for robbing and blackmailing 9 men he met for sex on the Grinder dating app. I mean, that's really, really something that we tend to highlight quite often and make use of, isn't it? Is the importance of being really careful with your dating apps.
Yeah, absolutely. Verifying, double checking, and gosh, there's only so much you can really do, though, isn't there? Because the whole nature of the dating apps is that you're putting your trust in someone else to say they're going to be who they say they are, aren't you?
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, we've got a big chunk of articles to make use of about safe online dating and stuff. So, all those related topics, do check those out, and just be more aware and be vigilant and be careful when online dating. In fact, any type of dating, but particularly when arranging dating through online apps. Okay, USB is not a unique selling bus. Terrible joke. USB's been around for years, as you probably know, and it's everything has a USB connection these days. TVs, some kitchen equipment, computers, mobile phones, and you probably recognise the sort of here's one. The sort of rectangular connector. That's a USB-A connector. Now, over the past few years, a new connector called USB-C has arrived, which is becoming more prominent. USB Type A would have this sort of rectangular connector at one end, and then at the other end, typically, it would have a more square connector, but with 2 diagonal edges. USB Type C typically has the same connector at both ends, which is obviously makes it easier to spot, but then again at the same time would limit you to particular types of connection. They all have adapters and things for them, but what the main difference between USB-A, good lord, right? So I said, over the past few years, it's actually 2014 USB Type-C was first unveiled, which is amazing. I thought it was a little bit more, I would have said about 2 years more recent than that. Wow.
Well, that's fun, isn't it? It feels like it's only really become sort of widespread in the last couple of years, but
yeah. But now we
it's
say
everywhere
that,
now, isn't it?
yeah. Now we say that, I'm thinking of one of my old Windows phones definitely had USB-C on it, and that was sort of around 2015. So yeah, I guess that would make sense. Wow, it does
So that's
feel
quite
like
advanced then, because that would be quite soon after it sort of
yeah,
launched.
yeah. Wow. That's just stopped me in my tracks slightly. So anyway, yeah. So USB A and USB C, there are obvious differences, visual differences, but there's also speed differences, which also impact how you use them. So yeah, USB A is the original. It's easily identified, as I said, and found in most types of devices, including laptops, smart TVs, game consoles, Blu-ray players. USB C came along in 2014. It's more slender, and they're gradually being added to more devices. Now I'm looking at what's in front of me now, and the the deck that we're recording this through has USB Type C, as does, just checking, as does the laptop. But the secondary laptop, which I do most of my work on, that is an older device, came out about 2017, doesn't have USB Type C at all. What about you? Have you
Well,
got
not
anything?
at all. Not at all.
Not at all, I don't think. No. No, it doesn't. What about anything you're using?
I was just looking at the. I've got a DAC, USB DAC, on my desktop for converting audio signals, and I've just realised that runs off USB-C. So it's that usefulness. I didn't even realise it used it. You just plug it in and off it goes. And I'm fairly sure the microphone that I'm currently speaking into, USB-C, smartphone. Um, and as you know, I review various products for makeuseof.com, often headphones, and they all use USB-C, all of them, bar none.
Bar none, except the pair that I'm using.
Oh, there's always one.
Yeah, these have got micro USB on them. These are about 3-year-old Sennheisers, so we'll let them off. So yeah, so the USB-C has a slimmer design. It's less clunky. It's easier to put in. The big problem with USB-A was putting it in the right way. And despite you having a 50-50 chance of getting it in the right way, I'm pretty sure, and certainly in my life, the rate of success was probably 30% of the time.
Yeah, incredibly, that it would still take 3 times to get it in.
What's that all about?
I still do it now. You've been using the bloody connectors for so long, and it happens every time.
The thing is, I mean, there is a kind of a tell, isn't there? There's like the two holes should be upwards most of the time, but not in every single device.
Yes. And if you can't see the holes or you can't see the thing you're putting them into, though, just like if you're trying to reach around the back of a TV or something like that.
Or a PC.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Absolute nightmare. So that is absolutely categorically one of the best things about USB-C, isn't it?
Yeah, it goes in any way you like.
Yeah,
It's
100%.
yeah, it's also faster, isn't it? Would you want to give me the stats on this, because I know you like your specifications.
So it's about 40 times faster and can deliver up to 40 gigabits per second, which is about 3,000 times faster than the original USB connector when it first came out, which had a maximum data rate of something like 12 megabits per second,
That's
which
mad,
was a very
isn't it?
long time ago. But yeah, if you consider the amount of data we now put through a USB-C cable, it's quite phenomenal, really,
Yeah.
because the amount of power that we use and the amount of data that we use, the standards have to increase with them.
Yeah, absolutely. If you into context, USB 3.1, which is you can usually identify, you used to be able to identify because the connectors and the ports were blue, although that doesn't seem to be always the case these days. That had a maximum data transfer rate of 10 gigabits per second, which is obviously 4 times less. It's a quarter the speed of USB-C.
It's phenomenal, really, isn't it? So
Yeah.
when we get like USB 4 in a few years, it'll be, even faster again. Although that is in the pipeline, but yeah, they haven't finalized the standard for that, but it won't be long.
I suppose with USB-C you have the opportunity to with computers, laptops in particular, with particularly low internal storage, if you get a USB-C compatible external hard drive, that's going to really help, isn't it?
Oh yeah, definitely. If you're doing stuff like backups and stuff, or transferring, large files for safety or whatever, then it's going to drastically cut your transfer times.
Yeah. What about for gaming? Is there a usage for gaming there, or media editing?
Definitely, I think with media editing, yeah, if you're same sort of thing, really. Like if you've got a big camera and you need to get your files on and off quickly. Um, I was just actually, you were saying about devices around you that have USB-C, and I picked up my old camera, and it's a USB. I don't even know what that is. It's like an old block USB type one. I was like, oh, that's why it takes so long to transfer
Yes.
files to the computer. So in terms of that, yeah, because again, the same thing are the cameras get bigger, don't they? The files get bigger, the
Yeah.
outputs get bigger. So getting them off the camera, doing it faster can only be a good thing.
Absolutely, absolutely. So those are the main differences between USB Type A and USB Type C. Do check the full article for the in-depth details there. You will find that USB Type C is faster, and which is why it's everywhere these days. We're going to move on now to car Wi-Fi. This is something that has been integrated with modern cars, and I mean, I if I'm sitting in my car, I don't have Wi-Fi built in, although I do have a Wi-Fi device. If there is anyone in my car that needs Wi-Fi, I tend to use my phone as a sort of Wi-Fi hub. Having Wi-Fi built into a car kind of prevents you from having to do that because the Wi-Fi is in the car, although you might be limited to what you can connect. I'm going to ask Gavin, do you have a car with built-in Wi-Fi?
I don't have one with built-in Wi-Fi, although I did travel in a friend's car recently that did have it.
Oh, right.
Um, and I thought it was interesting for the sort of novelty factor. Like, oh, I'm connecting to the internet in your car and we're moving along. But aside from that, I didn't necessarily see that much use for it in terms of how I live my day-to-day life, which is very much, do the school run, maybe do the shopping, go to the beach, etc., etc. I think if you perhaps are commuting quite a lot in your car and you end up an office for half an hour before you're going to go in somewhere, or perhaps on long journeys where you've got kids in the back and they
Mhm.
want to stream a movie or whatever, really, really useful. But for most other applications, I think I would go the same route as you. Use a mobile hotspot.
Yeah, the thing, I mean, I guess I can see why it would be useful, and I can kind of see why it will be integrated because Wi-Fi hardware is really affordable for manufacturers, so they can just bundle it in and stick the price up, and all the software means there's very little configuration needed other than connecting to the hotspot. My neighbour, and this is interesting because there could be a
Do you
security.
think it?
Sorry, go on.
I was going to say, do you think it creates a safety issue with someone being able to connect to Wi-Fi in your car, or someone outside the
Well,
car if you were parked somewhere being able to connect to it and tinker with your car?
I mean, I don't know what I mean, I don't want to say a definite no because obviously things happen, and I don't know the exact details between establishment of Wi-Fi hotspot and how well it is isolated from everything else in the vehicle, particularly the computers. However, my neighbour, I'm pretty sure, has Wi-Fi in their car because I keep spotting an unusual Wi-Fi hotspot on my phone, and it can only be a car because it's called my car, and
That'll throw
kind of a
you off. It's
giveaway,
actually on
yeah.
your bike.
Skateboard, but no.
Yeah.
So yeah, so and having a public SSID, that's the name of the hotspot. Having that public seems like a mistake to me, and there's probably a way to make it private, but on the other hand, it would be safer, I think, to have something like that private by default, wouldn't it? In this scenario, I mean, this possibility, because we know we talked years ago. I'm not saying on this podcast, but in online security topics, one of the key things was drive-by hotspot hijacking, and people parking outside houses and borrowing your Wi-Fi access using default router password, all that sort of stuff. Which is why you should obviously change your default password. And now we've got the idea of an actual car doing the actual driving by, and the car behind in the motorway potentially being able to borrow their internet, or the next car in the car park borrowing the internet and stuff like that. It just seems to me that it's a good idea, and I can see its uses, but it doesn't seem to. be as well thought out as it could be, given what we know about online security and router security.
I think as well, when you consider how most car manufacturers will approach this, which is that in-car Wi-Fi will be an add-on and likely something you'll have to pay extra for.
Oh yeah,
Whereas for most people, you got a smartphone, most people have a data allowance of some sort, don't they, in their contract or whatever, and you can easily switch that on and off as you need, change the password very simply to something more secure, and is maybe easier to use. I would say probably easier to use in a pinch. So
yeah, definitely. And I mean, I don't want to brag, but I've got a really good mobile deal at the moment from a subsidiary of Vodafone, and I've got like 100 GB per month for
yeah,
20 quid. And there's such good deals out there available. And obviously, I'm in the UK, so it's not going to be exactly the same in the US. But even so, there are good deals to be had. And I just think using a phone is a safer option and a better option.
yeah, definitely. I completely agree. Yeah.
Let us move on, therefore, to our recommendations. This is a feature in which we have experienced something in the past week or so, online, gaming, movie, whatever. I think as long as it has some sort of digital quality to it, I suppose. And then we share it with you, the listener, and then you can follow the show notes and go off and check it out yourself. Who's going first this week, me or thee?
You can go first if you like.
Okay, I'll go first. Mine, I mentioned this in last week's really useful podcast. And although I don't think it was my recommendation, if it was my recommendation, I do apologise. I really like it. I've been playing on the Evercade Versus over the past week, which is a home retro game console, which I received before Christmas, and there's a ton of cartridges for it. All retro games that have been curated and selected, and in order for maximum compatibility with the system, and it's just so good. There's games from all sorts of platforms: Atari, games from the Amiga and the 16-bit console era, and there's even a bunch of indie titles. There's a cartridge of indie titles for it as well. There's I think there's 28 titles in total from Evercade. Cartridges, beg your pardon, from Evercade. Something like 270 games. Only 26 of those will work on the Evercade Versus because of rights thing, complicated legal terminology I've used there, obviously. But it's such a good experience, and you can play these old games on your TV without messing around with emulators, which is a big pain in the backside, I find. So yeah, mine's is the Evercade Versus, and I've reviewed it recently on Make Use Of, and I'll link to that in the show notes so you can take a look at it.
The console unit itself looks really nice, doesn't it? Obviously, that is terrible podcasting content because you can't see what I'm talking about. But if you do get a chance, listener, go and look up the Evercade Versus because it looks really, really nice.
It is good. I'm so impressed with it. And also, I mean, I've got an Evercade handheld as well. Although, actually, my wife's not listening. I've got two Evercade handhelds as well. And and they all have this lovely sort of modern retro aesthetic, which they've continued on with the Evercade Versus, and it is a really, really nice looking console, and it's surprisingly small as well. It's got just the right amount of weight to it as well to not get dragged around. Because HDMI cables really like to push things around, don't they? So if you've got something that's too light, say a Raspberry Pi connected to an HDMI cable, you're going to have to sort of nail the Raspberry Pi down because the HDMI cable is going to move it all over the place. The Evercade Versus has got just the right enough bulk and weight to not get pushed around by an HDMI cable. So yeah, I would recommend that. What's your recommendation?
I will recommend some earbuds that I have been really happy with, primarily because they have incredible battery life.
All right.
I don't know how much people put store in the battery life of earbuds, but so the Clear Ally Plus 2 buds have 11 hours worth of battery on the earbuds, which is pretty good. You get like another 22 hours worth of charge in the carry case, so you get like up to 3 charges, which on the face of it doesn't sound like that much, but when you factor in that's 33 hours or so of listening, it's pretty good. They're also really comfortable once you find sort of the correct ear tip fitting for your ears. You get 8 different ear tips that you can switch out. They're super simple to switch across. And the earbuds themselves have come with the aptX adaptive codec, which means that you can use these earbuds for some high-res streaming. So if you sign up for a high-resolution audio streaming service or have your own high-res audio copies, you can use these earbuds to hear music and other media formats in their full glory, rather than having like a compressed codec, which, you know, most of the time it sounds absolutely fine, but every now and then you can really notice the difference using one of these high-res streaming audio codecs. So yeah, all in all, they're a really nice little set of earbuds.
And what make are they again?
These are, the brand is Clear, and the name of the earbuds is the Ally Plus 2.
Excellent. We will have a link to those in the show notes. Which brings us to the end of this week's really useful podcast. Thank you very much for joining us, and until next time, it's goodbye from us.